A young black boy named Jordan notices a little girl, Emily, upset after her favorite toy breaks. Feeling compassion, he offers to fix it for her, turning what could have been a sad moment into a heartwarming act of kindness. What Jordan doesn't realize is that his small gesture will lead to life-changing consequences far beyond what anyone could have imagined. So, how does Jordan's generosity transform the situation? And what surprising turn of events does it lead to? Stick around to find out. But before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy this tale, don't forget to subscribe. In the heart of Millbrook, a small town where everyone knew their neighbors by name, lived a remarkable boy named Jordan Carter. At just 12 years old, Jordan had already earned a reputation as the go-to handyman for the community. His nimble fingers and keen eye for detail allowed him to breathe new life into broken objects, from rusty bicycles to finicky radios. Jordan's home, a modest two-bedroom house on Maple Street, stood in stark contrast to the grand houses that lined the nearby Oak Avenue. Despite their humble circumstances, Jordan and his mother, Lisa, always had smiles on their faces and warmth in their hearts. "Jordan, honey, can you help Mrs. Jenkins with her toaster again?" Lisa called out one sunny Saturday morning. Jordan poked his head out from his makeshift workshop in the garage. "Sure, Mom. I'll be right there." As Jordan trotted down the street, toolbox in hand, he waved to familiar faces. Mr. Gus, tending to his prized roses, tipped his hat. "There goes our little fixer-upper," he chuckled. Jordan grinned, his gap-toothed smile radiating pure joy. He loved nothing more than the satisfaction of making something work again, of seeing the relief and happiness on people's faces when he solved their problems. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away on Oak Avenue, a different scene was unfolding. In a sprawling Victorian house with perfectly manicured lawns, 7-year-old Emily Thompson sat on her bedroom floor, tears streaming down her cherubic face. "Oh, sweetie, don't cry," cooed her mother, Amelia Thompson, kneeling beside her daughter. "We'll figure something out." Emily clutched a delicate porcelain music box to her chest. The lid was slightly askew, and no matter how many times she wound the key, not a single note played. This wasn't just any music box. It was a precious gift from her grandmother, who had passed away the previous year. "But Grandma gave it to me," Emily hiccuped between sobs. "She said it would always play music for me when I missed her." Robert Thompson, Emily's father, entered the room, his brow furrowed with concern. He was still dressed in his crisp business suit, having just returned from a long day at the office. "What's the matter, Princess?" he asked, crouching down next to his wife and daughter. Amelia explained the situation, and Robert gently took the music box from Emily's hands. He examined it closely, turning it this way and that, but the intricate mechanism inside was beyond his understanding. "How about we take it to that antique shop in the city?" Amelia suggested. "They might be able to fix it." Robert shook his head. "That could take weeks, and there's no guarantee they won't damage it further." He paused, an idea forming. I heard some of the neighbors talking about a young boy who's good with repairs. Maybe we could ask him to take a look." Emily's eyes widened with hope. "Really, Daddy? Do you think he could fix it?" Robert smiled, ruffling his daughter's blonde curls. "It's worth a try, sweetheart. Why don't we go find him right now?" Hand in hand, the Thompson family walked down Oak Avenue, crossing the invisible boundary that separated their affluent neighborhood from the more modest part of town. As they turned onto Maple Street, they saw a young black boy walking in their direction, toolbox swinging at his side. "Excuse me," Robert called out. "We're looking for a boy who's good at fixing things. Would that happen to be you?" Jordan stopped, surprised to see such well-dressed people in his neighborhood. He nodded, a little shy but eager to help. "Yes, sir. I'm Jordan. What can I do for you?" Emily stepped forward, her blue eyes still glistening with tears. She held out the music box. "Can you fix this? It was my grandma's, and it won't play anymore." Jordan carefully took the music box, immediately noticing its delicate craftsmanship. He opened the lid, peering inside at the complex mechanism. It was unlike anything he'd worked on before, but the challenge excited him. "I've never fixed a music box," Jordan admitted honestly, "but I'd like to try if you'll let me." Robert knelt down to Jordan's eye level. "Son, This music box means the world to my daughter. Are you sure you're up for the task? Jordan met Mr. Thompson's gaze with determination. I promise to do my very best, sir. I know how important special things can be. Emily, who had been hiding behind her father's legs, slowly emerged. She looked at Jordan with a mixture of hope and apprehension. You'll be careful with it, right? She asked in a small voice. Jordan's face softened as he addressed Emily directly. I'll treat it like it's the most precious thing in the world, he assured her. Because I know that's what it is to you. Emily's lips curved into a tentative smile. She reached out and touched Jordan's hand lightly. Thank you, she whispered. As the Thompsons prepared to leave, Robert handed Jordan his business card. Please call us when you're finished, no matter the outcome. And don't hesitate to reach out if you need any resources to complete the repair. Jordan nodded, clutching the music box carefully. He watched as the family walked away, Emily turning back to wave shyly. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his young shoulders, but it was a weight he welcomed. Jordan walked through the front door of his modest home on Maple Street. The delicate music box in his hands represented more than just a broken toy. It was a piece of someone's heart, a tangible link to cherished memories. Mom, I'm home, Jordan called out, his voice tinged with excitement and nervousness. Lisa Carter emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes widened as she saw the ornate music box in her son's hands. What have you got there, honey? Jordan carefully placed the music box on the dining table and explained the situation to his mother. Lisa listened intently, her face softening with pride as she heard about her son's promise to help the little girl from Oak Avenue. Oh, Jordan, she said, pulling him into a warm hug. You've got such a big heart, just like your grandpa. Jordan's eyes lit up at the mention of his grandfather. I wish he was here, Mom. He'd know exactly how to fix this. Lisa cupped her son's face in her hands. He may not be here in person, but his spirit lives on in you, baby. And I know he'd be so proud of the young man you're becoming. With renewed determination, Jordan carefully carried the music box to his makeshift workshop in the garage. It was a cluttered space, filled with odds and ends, spare parts, and an assortment of tools, some inherited from his grandfather, others cobbled together from yard sales and thrift stores. As Jordan settled onto his worn stool, he began to examine the music box more closely. The porcelain exterior was exquisite, painted with delicate flowers and gilded edges that spoke of a bygone era. But it was the intricate mechanism inside that both fascinated and intimidated him. All right, Jordan muttered to himself. Let's see what we're dealing with here. He carefully opened the lid, revealing a complex array of gears, springs, and levers. It was unlike anything he had ever worked on before. Jordan's brow furrowed in concentration as he tried to understand how all the pieces fit together. Hours ticked by as Jordan tinkered with the music box. He consulted old repair manuals his grandfather had left behind, watched online tutorials on his mom's tablet, and even called Mr. Gus from down the street, who had a penchant for antiques. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garage, Lisa peeked in to check on her son. She found Jordan hunched over his workbench, his face a mask of intense concentration. How's it going, sweetie? She asked softly, not wanting to startle him. Jordan looked up, frustration evident in his eyes. It's harder than I thought, Mom. There are so many tiny parts, and I'm afraid I'll break something if I'm not careful. Lisa walked over and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You know, your grandpa used to say that the toughest fixes are often the most rewarding. Why don't you take a break and have some dinner? A fresh perspective might help. Reluctantly, Jordan agreed. As they sat at the kitchen table, eating reheated lasagna, Lisa couldn't help but notice the faraway look in her son's eyes. What's on your mind, Jordan? She asked gently. Jordan pushed his food around his plate. I was just thinking about Emily. That's the little girl who owns the music box. She looked so sad when she gave it to me. What if I can't fix it, Mom? What if I let her down? Lisa reached across the table and squeezed her son's hand. Jordan Carter, listen to me. The fact that you're trying so hard, that you care so much, that already means the world to that little girl and her family. Sometimes our best is all we can give, and that's more than enough. Her words seemed to lift some of the weight from Jordan's shoulders. He finished his dinner with renewed energy and headed back to the garage, determined to make progress. In the Thompson household, Emily lay in her bed, unable to sleep. She clutched her favorite stuffed animal, a well-worn teddy bear, and stared at the empty spot on her nightstand where the music box usually sat. "Do you think he'll be able to fix it, Teddy?" she whispered to her bear. "I miss Grandma's lullaby." Amelia, passing by her daughter's room, overheard the one-sided conversation. She paused in the doorway, her heart aching for her little girl. "Emily, sweetie," she called softly. "Are you still awake?" Emily sat up, nodding. Amelia crossed the room and perched on the edge of the bed, gathering her daughter into her arms. "I know you're worried about your music box," Amelia said, stroking Emily's hair. "But remember what Grandma always said? Have faith in the goodness of others." Emily nodded against her mother's chest. "Jordan seemed nice," she murmured, "and he promised to be careful." Amelia smiled. "That's right. And do you know what else? Sometimes when things break, they come back even stronger than before. Just like people." And Emily drifted off to sleep, comforted by her mother's words. As the night wore on, Jordan faced setback after setback. A tiny spring snapped as he tried to reposition it. A gear refused to align properly. The more he worked, the more impossible the task seemed. In a moment of frustration, Jordan pushed away from the workbench, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. He was about to give up when his gaze fell on an old photograph tacked to the wall. It showed a younger version of himself, maybe 6 or 7 years old, standing proudly next to his grandfather. They were both covered in grease, grinning widely as they posed in front of an old radio they had just fixed together. The memory of that day came flooding back to Jordan. He remembered how many times they had almost given up, how his grandfather had encouraged him to keep trying, to think creatively. "When you hit a wall, Jordan boy," his grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. "That's when you've got to get clever. There's always a solution. Sometimes you just need to look at the problem from a different angle." Inspired by the memory, Jordan took a deep breath and returned to the music box. This time, instead of focusing on the individual parts that weren't working, he tried to understand how they all fit together as a whole. As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the garage windows, Jordan had a breakthrough. He realized that the main problem wasn't a broken part at all. It was that the entire mechanism had shifted slightly out of alignment over the years. With steady hands and bated breath, Jordan carefully adjusted the positioning of the gears and springs. He wound the key, his heart pounding in anticipation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like magic, a soft, tinkling melody filled the air. Jordan's face split into a wide grin. He had done it. The music box was playing again, its sweet notes a testament to his perseverance and skill. "Mom! Mom, come quick!" Jordan shouted, unable to contain his excitement. Lisa came running into the garage, still in her pajamas. When she heard the music playing, her eyes filled with tears of pride. "Oh, Jordan," she whispered, pulling him into a tight hug. "You did it, baby. You really did it." As they stood there, listening to the delicate melody, Jordan felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he'd experienced before. He'd faced a challenge, persevered through difficulties, and emerged victorious. More importantly, he'd made a real difference in someone's life. The rest of the morning was spent carefully cleaning and polishing the music box. Jordan oiled the hinges so the lid opened smoothly and made sure every note played perfectly. As he worked, he couldn't stop smiling, imagining the joy on Emily's face when she heard her grandmother's lullaby once more. As Jordan prepared to return the music box, Lisa helped him wrap it carefully in a soft cloth. She looked at her son, noticing how he seemed to have grown taller overnight, his eyes shining with a new confidence. "You know," Lisa said softly, "your grandpa always said you had a special gift. He knew you'd do great things one day." Jordan ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. "I just hope Emily likes it," he mumbled. Lisa chuckled, ruffling his hair. "Oh, I think she'll more than like it. You've given her back a piece of her heart, Jordan. That's no small thing." As Jordan set off for Oak Avenue, the repaired music box cradled carefully in his arms, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The warm summer sun on his face and the weight of his accomplishment in his hands filled him with a sense of purpose. The walk to the Thompson house seemed both longer and shorter than he remembered. Each step brought him closer to the moment of truth. Would Emily be happy with the repair? Would the music box live up to her expectations? As he turned onto Oak Avenue, Jordan couldn't help but feel a little out of place. The grand houses with their manicured lawns were a far cry from his own modest neighborhood. But the memory of Emily's hopeful face and Mr. Thompson's trust in him bolstered his confidence. Jordan approached the Thompsons' house, his heart racing. Before he could even reach the front door, it swung open. Emily stood there, her blue eyes wide with anticipation. "Jordan," she exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. Did you?" Jordan couldn't help but smile at her excitement. "Why don't you see for yourself?" he said, carefully handing over the wrapped music box. With trembling hands, Emily unwrapped the cloth. The music box looked just as she remembered, its porcelain surface gleaming in the sunlight. She glanced up at Jordan, who nodded encouragingly. Holding her breath, Emily opened the lid. For a moment, there was silence. Then, as if by magic, the sweet, familiar notes of her grandmother's lullaby filled the air. Emily's eyes filled with tears of joy. She looked up at Jordan, her face radiant with happiness. "You fixed it," she whispered. "You really fixed it." Before Jordan could respond, Emily threw her arms around him in a tight hug. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she repeated, her words muffled against his shirt. Jordan, slightly overwhelmed by her reaction, patted her back awkwardly. "I'm just glad I could help," he said softly. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of the music and their daughter's excited cries. When they saw the scene before them, Emily hugging Jordan, the repaired music box playing its sweet melody, their faces lit up with gratitude and amazement. "Young man," Mr. Thompson said, his voice thick with emotion, "you've done more than just fix a music box. You've restored a piece of our family's history. How can we ever thank you?" Jordan, suddenly shy in the face of such praise, shrugged. "I'm just glad I could help, sir. It was a challenge, but while my grandpa always said that the toughest fixes are often the most rewarding." Mrs. Thompson wiped a tear from her eye. "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. He must be very proud of you." Jordan's smile turned a little sad. "He passed away a couple of years ago, but I like to think he was watching over me while I worked on the music box." The Thompsons exchanged a glance, clearly moved by Jordan's words. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "Jordan, we'd like to do something to show our appreciation. Would you and your mother join us for dinner tonight? We'd love to thank you properly." Jordan's eyes widened in surprise. "I'd have to ask my mom, but I'd like that, Mr. Thompson. Thank you." As Jordan turned to leave, promising to return that evening with his mother, he felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he'd experienced before. He'd faced a challenge, persevered through difficulties, and emerged victorious. More importantly, he'd made a real difference in someone's life. Walking back down Oak Avenue, Jordan's mind raced with possibilities. He thought about all the other broken things in the world, all the people who needed help. Maybe, just maybe, he could be the one to fix them. When Jordan arrived home, he found his mother waiting anxiously on the front porch. The moment she saw his beaming face, she knew the repair had been a success. "Oh, honey," she said, pulling him into a hug. "I'm so proud of you. Tell me everything." As they sat on the porch swing, Jordan recounted the events of the morning. Emily's joy, the Thompsons' gratitude, and the dinner invitation. Lisa listened intently, her heart swelling with pride for her son. "You know," she said softly, "your grandpa always said you'd do great things. I think this is just the beginning for you, Jordan." Jordan leaned against his mother, feeling both excited and a little overwhelmed by the events of the past day. "Do you think Grandpa would be proud?" he asked hesitantly. Lisa kissed the top of his head. "Oh, baby, he'd be over the moon. You've got his gift, not just for fixing things, but for helping people. That's a rare and precious thing." As they sat there, enjoying the warm summer afternoon, Jordan felt a sense of contentment wash over him. He'd done more than just repair a music box. He'd restored a family's treasured memories, bridged two very different worlds, and discovered a new sense of purpose. Little did Jordan know that this was just the beginning. The dinner invitation from the Thompsons would lead to conversations that would change the course of his life. But for now, he was content with the knowledge that somewhere on Oak Avenue, a little girl was listening to her grandmother's lullaby, her heart full of joy and her faith in the goodness of others restored. As the day wore on, Jordan helped his mother prepare for the dinner at the Thompsons. They didn't have many fancy clothes, but Lisa managed to find a nice button-down shirt for Jordan and pressed it carefully. "Remember your manners," she reminded him as they got ready to leave. "And Jordan, no matter what happens, I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've shown such kindness and determination." Jordan nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness as they set off for Oak Avenue. The weight of the repaired music box might have been lifted from his shoulders, but he could feel the potential of this evening settling in its place. A different kind of responsibility, full of possibility. As they walked up the manicured path to the Thompsons' front door, Jordan squeezed his mother's hand. Whatever came next, they would face it together, just as they always had. Mr. Thompson opened the door, greeting them with a warm smile. "Jordan, Mrs. Carter, welcome. Please come in." As they stepped into the grand foyer, Jordan couldn't help but marvel at the elegant surroundings. Everything seemed to shine, from the polished hardwood floors to the crystal chandelier overhead. Emily came bounding down the stairs, her face lighting up when she saw Jordan. "You're here," she exclaimed. "Come on, I want to show you something." Before anyone could stop her, Emily had grabbed Jordan's hand and was pulling him towards the living room. There, on a place of honor on the mantelpiece, sat the repaired music box. "I've been playing it all day," Emily confided. "It's like having a piece of Grandma back." Jordan felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. This, he realized, was why he loved fixing things. It wasn't just about the challenge or the satisfaction of a job well done. It was about bringing joy to others, about making a difference in people's lives. As the adults joined them in the living room, Mrs. Thompson invited everyone to the dining room. The table was set beautifully, with fine china and gleaming silverware that made Jordan feel a bit out of place. But the warm smiles of the Thompsons put him at ease as they all took their seats. As they began to eat, Mr. Thompson turned his attention to Jordan. "So, Jordan," he began, his tone friendly but curious, "tell us more about yourself. What are your interests? What do you dream of doing when you grow up?" Jordan glanced at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "Well, sir, I've always loved fixing things. Ever since I was little, I'd take apart old radios and clocks, trying to figure out how they worked. My grandpa taught me a lot before he passed away." Mr. Thompson nodded, clearly intrigued. "And is that what you'd like to do as a career? Repair things?" Jordan's eyes lit up. "Actually, I'd love to be an engineer someday. To design and build things that could help people, you know?" But his voice trailed off, and he looked down at his plate. "But what, Jordan?" Mrs. Thompson prompted gently. Jordan looked up, his expression a mix of determination and resignation. "Well, college is expensive, and we don't. I mean, it's just not something we can afford right now. But that's okay. I'm going to keep learning and working hard, and maybe someday." The room fell silent for a moment. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson exchanged a look that seemed to convey an entire conversation. Finally, Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "Jordan," he said, his voice serious but kind, "what would you say if I told you that your dream of becoming an engineer doesn't have to be just a dream?" Jordan's brow furrowed in confusion. "Sir?" Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his eyes intent on Jordan's face. "I've been watching you, Jordan. The way you approach the challenge of fixing Emily's music box, the determination and creativity you showed, those are qualities that can't be taught. They're innate, and they're precious." Jordan felt his heart begin to race. What was Mr. Thompson saying? "I'd like to make you an offer, Jordan," Mr. Thompson continued. "An offer that I hope will change your life. I want to sponsor your education." The room seemed to spin around Jordan. He heard his mother gasp beside him, but it sounded far away. "Sponsor my education?" he repeated, sure he must have misheard. Mr. Thompson nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "That's right. From now through college, if that's what you want. Private school, tutors, summer programs. Whatever you need to pursue your dream of becoming an engineer. What do you say?" Jordan sat there, stunned into silence. He looked at his mother, whose eyes were filling with tears. "Mom," he whispered. Lisa reached out and took her son's hand. "Oh, Jordan," she said, her voice choked with emotion. It's an incredible opportunity. But it's your decision, honey. Jordan turned back to Mr. Thompson, his mind whirling. I don't know what to say, sir. This is more than I ever dreamed of. But why? Why would you do this for me? Mr. Thompson's expression softened. Because talent like yours shouldn't go to waste, Jordan. Because I believe you have the potential to do great things, to make a real difference in the world. And because sometimes, all it takes is one person believing in you to change the course of your life. Jordan felt tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. He thought of his grandfather, of all the hours they'd spent tinkering in the garage. He thought of his mother, working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. He thought of Emily's joy when she heard her grandmother's lullaby, playing once again. Taking a deep breath, Jordan straightened his shoulders and met Mr. Thompson's gaze. Sir, if you're really offering this, then yes. Yes, I accept. And I promise, I'll work harder than I've ever worked before. I won't let you down. The room erupted in cheers. Emily clapped her hands in delight, while Mrs. Thompson dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Mr. Thompson reached across the table to shake Jordan's hand. I know you won't, son, he said warmly. This is just the beginning of great things for you. As the reality of what had just happened began to sink in, Jordan felt a mix of emotions wash over him. Excitement, gratitude, a touch of fear at the unknown path ahead. But most of all, he felt a sense of possibility that he'd never experienced before. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversation and laughter. Plans were made for Jordan to tour potential schools, to meet with tutors who could help him catch up in subjects he'd struggled with. Through it all, Jordan kept glancing at his mother, seeing the pride and joy shining in her eyes. As the night drew to a close and they prepared to leave, Mr. Thompson pulled Jordan aside for a moment. You've got a real gift, son, he said softly. Not just for fixing things, but for bringing people together. Don't ever lose sight of that. Jordan nodded, feeling a swell of emotion in his chest. I won't, sir. Thank you for believing in me. As Jordan and his mother walked home under the starry sky, their hearts were full of hope and excitement for the future. The simple act of repairing a broken music box had set in motion a chain of events that would change Jordan's life forever. Mom, Jordan said as they turned onto their street, do you think Grandpa would be proud? Lisa wrapped her arm around her son's shoulders, pulling him close. Oh, honey, she said, her voice thick with emotion. He'd be over the moon. You're living the dream he always had for you. Jordan smiled, thinking of his grandfather's weathered hands guiding his own as they worked on an old radio. I'm going to make you both proud, he said softly. I promise. As they reached their front porch, Lisa turned to face her son. In the soft glow of the porch light, she could see the determination in his eyes, the set of his jaw that reminded her so much of his grandfather. Jordan, she said, taking his hands in hers, I want you to listen to me. No matter what happens from here on out, no matter where this opportunity takes you, never forget where you came from. The kindness and hard work that got you here, those are the things that truly matter. Mr. Thompson saw those qualities in you, and that's why he's giving you this chance. Jordan nodded solemnly. I won't forget, Mom. I promise. As they stepped into their small house, the contrast with the Thompsons' grand home was stark. But to Jordan, it had never felt more like home. This was where he had learned the value of hard work, where his mother had sacrificed so much to give him a chance at a better life. That night, as Jordan lay in bed, his mind raced with thoughts of the future. He imagined himself in a lab coat, designing incredible machines. He saw himself returning to his old neighborhood, helping other kids like him realize their dreams. But most of all, he thought about the music box. Such a small thing, really, but it had changed everything. As he drifted off to sleep, the sweet melody of Emily's grandmother's lullaby seemed to float through the air, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the things we thought were broken beyond repair. The next morning, Jordan woke up early, filled with a new sense of purpose. As he helped his mother make breakfast, he couldn't stop talking about all the possibilities that lay ahead. Mom, he said suddenly, pausing in the middle of setting the table, I want to do something for Mr. Thompson, to show him how grateful I am. Lisa smiled, ruffling her son's hair. That's a wonderful idea, honey. What did you have in mind? Jordan thought for a moment. Then his face lit up. I know. Remember that old clock in their living room? The one that wasn't working? I bet I could fix it for them. Lisa nodded approvingly. I think that's perfect, Jordan. It shows initiative and gratitude, exactly the qualities Mr. Thompson saw in you. After breakfast, Jordan called the Thompson house, nervously asking if he could come over to look at the clock. Mr. Thompson sounded delighted by the offer, inviting him over immediately. As Jordan worked on the clock, carefully dismantling it and examining each part, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. This was what he loved, what he was meant to do. And now, thanks to Mr. Thompson's generosity, he had the chance to turn this passion into a real future. Hours passed as Jordan tinkered with the clock. The Thompsons checked on him occasionally, bringing him snacks and words of encouragement. Finally, as the afternoon sun began to slant through the windows, Jordan heard the satisfying tick-tock of the restored clock. It's working, he called out excitedly. The Thompsons gathered around, marveling at the now-functioning antique. Mr. Thompson clapped Jordan on the shoulder, his eyes shining with pride. You've got a real gift, son, he said warmly, and I can't wait to see how you'll use it to change the world. As Jordan walked home that evening, the weight of the future rested on his shoulders. But it wasn't a burden, it was a promise. A promise to work hard, to never forget where he came from, and to use his skills to help others, just as he'd been helped. The melody of Emily's music box seemed to follow him down the street, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful symphonies start with a single, simple note. And for Jordan, this was just the beginning of his song. The autumn leaves crunched beneath Jordan's feet as he made his way up the imposing stone steps of Westfield Academy. His new school uniform felt stiff and unfamiliar, but the excitement bubbling in his chest overshadowed any discomfort. As he pushed open the heavy wooden doors, Jordan couldn't help but marvel at how much his life had changed in just a few short months. The hallways of Westfield were a far cry from his old public school. Polished marble floors reflected the sunlight streaming through tall windows, and the walls were adorned with portraits of distinguished alumni. Jordan felt a momentary pang of self-doubt, wondering if he truly belonged in such a prestigious institution. But then he remembered Mr. Thompson's words on the day he'd dropped Jordan off for his entrance exams. Remember, Jordan, you earned your place here. Your mind and your determination got you through those doors. Not my recommendation or anyone else's. Taking a deep breath, Jordan straightened his shoulders and made his way to his first class. As he settled into his seat, he couldn't help but smile at the thought of all the new things he was about to learn. The first few weeks at Westfield were a whirlwind of new experiences. Jordan found himself challenged in ways he'd never been before, tackling advanced math problems and diving into complex scientific theories. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, he felt invigorated. Every new concept was like a puzzle waiting to be solved, and Jordan approached each challenge with the same determination he'd used to fix Emily's music box. His teachers quickly took notice of his enthusiasm and aptitude. Mr. Kendrick, his physics teacher, often stayed after class to discuss advanced topics with Jordan, nurturing his growing passion for engineering. You've got a real talent, Jordan, Mr. Kendrick said one afternoon as they pored over a diagram of a complex machine. But more importantly, you've got the drive to turn that talent into something extraordinary. Jordan beamed at the praise, feeling a surge of gratitude for the opportunity he'd been given. Thank you, sir. I just want to make the most of this chance. As Jordan thrived academically, he also found himself forming new friendships. His classmates were initially curious about the new scholarship student, but Jordan's warmth and intelligence quickly won them over. He joined the robotics club, where he found kindred spirits who shared his passion for building and creating. But despite his busy schedule at Westfield, Jordan never forgot the people who had made his new life possible. Every Friday afternoon, he'd make his way to the Thompson house, where Emily would be waiting eagerly for their weekly tinkering session. What had started as a simple gesture of gratitude, Jordan offering to teach Emily some basic repair skills, had blossomed into a cherished tradition for both of them. They'd spread out their tools on the kitchen table, surrounded by broken toys, malfunctioning gadgets, and half-finished inventions. Jordan, look, Emily exclaimed one sunny afternoon, holding up a small motor she'd successfully wired. It's working. Jordan grinned, giving her a high five. Great job, Em. You're getting really good at this. As they worked, Jordan would often share stories about his week at Westfield, explaining complex concepts in ways that Emily could understand. Her eyes would light up with curiosity, absorbing every word. Do you think I could go to Westfield someday? She asked once, her voice tinged with hope. Jordan ruffled her hair affectionately. Of course you could. You're smart and hardworking. That's all you need. And hey, maybe by then, I'll be one of the teachers. These afternoons weren't just about tinkering, though. They were about friendship, about bridging the gap between two worlds that might never have intersected if not for a broken music box. Jordan and Emily's bond grew stronger with each passing week, transcending age and background. The Thompsons and the Carters, too, found their lives increasingly intertwined. Lisa Carter, initially hesitant about accepting such a grand gesture from the Thompsons, soon found herself forming a close friendship with Amelia Thompson. They'd chat over coffee while the kids worked on their projects, sharing stories and advice. Robert Thompson took his role as Jordan's mentor seriously, often inviting the boy to his study for long conversations about his future. He introduced Jordan to colleagues in the engineering field, arranged internships during school breaks, and always made sure Jordan knew he had someone in his corner. Remember, Jordan, Mr. Thompson said during one of their talks, success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about how you use that success to lift others up. Those words stuck with Jordan, becoming a guiding principle as he navigated his new world. As the years passed, Jordan's potential blossomed into true talent. He graduated from Westfield at the top of his class, earning a full scholarship to a prestigious engineering program. College brought new challenges and opportunities, but Jordan approached them with the same determination and creativity he'd shown since childhood. During his sophomore year of college, Jordan received an excited call from Emily. Jordan, guess what? I got in. I'm coming to Westfield next year. Jordan's face split into a wide grin. That's amazing, Em. I knew you could do it. We'll have to celebrate next time I'm home. Their friendship had endured despite the distance, with Emily following in Jordan's footsteps and developing her own passion for science and technology. Jordan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, knowing he'd played a small part in inspiring her journey. After college, Jordan's career took off rapidly. His innovative designs and problem-solving skills made him a rising star in the engineering world. He found himself working on cutting-edge projects, developing technologies that had the potential to change lives. But even as his success grew, Jordan never forgot where he came from or the people who had helped him along the way. The lessons he'd learned from his grandfather, the sacrifices his mother had made, and the generosity of the Thompsons. All of these shaped his worldview and his goals. On his 30th birthday, Jordan stood before a small crowd gathered in the community center of his old neighborhood. The faces looking back at him were young and eager, reminding him of himself at that age. Today, he announced, his voice steady with purpose, I'm excited to launch the Fixing Futures program. This initiative will provide mentorship, resources, and opportunities for young people in our community who have big dreams but limited means. The room erupted in applause. In the front row, Jordan could see his mother wiping away tears of pride. Beside her sat the Thompsons, Emily, now a poised young woman pursuing her own engineering degree. Mr. Thompson gave Jordan a nod of approval, his eyes shining with the knowledge that his investment in one boy's future had set off a chain reaction of positive change. As Jordan explained the details of the program, the after-school workshops, the scholarship opportunities, the mentorship network, he could see the spark of hope igniting in the eyes of the kids in the audience. It was the same spark he'd felt when Mr. Thompson had offered to sponsor his education all those years ago. Remember, Jordan said as he concluded his speech, every one of you has the potential to do great things. Sometimes, all it takes is one person believing in you to change the course of your life. Today, I want you to know that I believe in each and every one of you. The program was an immediate success. Jordan threw himself into it with the same passion he brought to his engineering projects. He recruited colleagues as mentors, partnered with local businesses for internships, and worked tirelessly to create opportunities for the next generation. One crisp autumn afternoon, A few months after the launch of Fixing Futures, Jordan found himself back in his old neighborhood. He was there to check on the progress of the program's first batch of students, but as he walked down the familiar streets, he felt a wave of nostalgia wash over him. As he passed by his childhood home, now occupied by a new family, he heard a small voice call out, "Mister, can you help me?" Jordan turned to see a young boy, no more than 7 or 8, sitting on the front steps. In his hands was a remote-controlled car, its wheels spinning uselessly. With a smile, Jordan approached the boy. "What seems to be the problem, buddy?" The boy held up the car, his face scrunched up in frustration. "It won't go forward, only backwards and sideways. Can you fix it?" Jordan knelt down beside the boy, gently taking the toy. As he examined it, he felt a familiar thrill, the excitement of a new challenge, the satisfaction of understanding how things worked. "You know what?" Jordan said, reaching into his pocket for the small toolkit he still carried out of habit. "I think I can, but how about I show you how to fix it yourself?" The boy's eyes widened with interest. "Really? You teach me?" Jordan nodded, settling down on the steps. "Absolutely. It's important to know how to fix things yourself. My grandpa taught me that when I was about your age." As Jordan guided the boy through the process of repairing the toy car, he felt as if his life had come full circle. Here he was, passing on the knowledge and skills that had changed his life, potentially sparking the same passion in another young mind. "There you go," Jordan said as the boy successfully reconnected the last wire. "Why don't you give it a try now?" The boy placed the car on the sidewalk and pressed the remote control. The car zoomed forward, executing a perfect turn before racing back to them. The boy's face lit up with joy and pride. "I did it," he exclaimed. "I really fixed it." Jordan couldn't help but grin, remembering the same feeling of accomplishment he'd had when he'd fixed Emily's music box all those years ago. "You sure did, buddy. Great job." As Jordan stood to leave, the boy looked up at him curiously. "Mister, how did you learn to fix things so well?" Jordan paused, a warm smile spreading across his face as he thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. "Well," he said, "it's a long story, but it all started with a broken music box and a little girl who believed I could fix it." As Jordan began to share his story with the wide-eyed boy, he felt a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. The cycle of kindness that had begun with Mr. Thompson's generous offer had come full circle. Now, it was Jordan's turn to pass on the gift of opportunity, one fixed toy and one inspired child at a time. In that moment, standing on the steps of his old neighborhood with a repaired toy car and an eager young listener, Jordan knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. The Fixing Futures program would continue to grow, touching more lives and creating more opportunities. And with each life changed, the ripple effect of that one act of kindness, fixing a broken music box, would spread further and further. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, Jordan finished his story. The boy sat in awe, clearly inspired by the tale of perseverance and generosity. "Wow," the boy breathed. "So you became an engineer because you fixed that music box?" Jordan chuckled. "Well, it wasn't just the music box. It was the kindness of the people who believed in me and the hard work I put in to make the most of the opportunity one was given." The boy nodded solemnly, then looked down at the repaired toy car in his hands. Do you think I could be an engineer someday too?" Jordan felt a warmth spread through his chest, recognizing the spark of curiosity and ambition in the boy's eyes, the same spark he'd had at that age. "I absolutely think you could," he said earnestly. "In fact, why don't you come to our next Fixing Futures workshop? We're going to be building simple robots. I think you'd really enjoy it." The boy's face lit up with excitement. "Really? Can I?" Jordan nodded, reaching into his pocket for a business card. "Absolutely. Here, give this to your parents and have them call me. We'll get you all set up." As Jordan stood to leave, the boy jumped up and wrapped his arms around Jordan's waist in a spontaneous hug. "Thank you, mister. Thank you for fixing my car and for telling me your story." Jordan patted the boy's back, feeling a lump form in his throat. "You're very welcome, buddy. Remember, with hard work and determination, you can fix just about anything, including your future." As Jordan walked away, he could hear the excited vrooming of the toy car behind him, accompanied by the boys' joyful laughter. He couldn't help but smile, knowing that he'd just witnessed the potential start of another journey, another life that might be transformed by the power of kindness and opportunity. That evening, as Jordan drove back to his apartment in the city, he found himself reflecting on the twists and turns his life had taken. From a curious boy tinkering in his grandfather's garage to a successful engineer running a program to help underprivileged kids, it had been quite a journey. He thought about his mother, who had sacrificed so much to give him a good life. About Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, who had seen potential in him and given him the chance to reach for his dreams. About Emily, whose broken music box had set this whole adventure in motion, and who was now following her own path in engineering. As he pulled into his parking spot, Jordan's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Emily. "Hey Jay, just aced my thermodynamics midterm. Couldn't have done it without all those study sessions with you. Thanks for always believing in me." Jordan smiled, quickly typing back a congratulatory message. Their friendship had remained strong over the years, evolving as they both grew and changed. Emily was no longer the shy little girl with a broken toy, but a confident young woman carving her own path in the world of science and technology. As he rode the elevator up to his apartment, Jordan's mind wandered to the Fixing Futures program. He made a mental note to call Mr. Thompson in the morning, to update him on the program's progress, and to thank him once again for the opportunity he'd given Jordan all those years ago. Stepping into his apartment, Jordan's eyes fell on a familiar object sitting on his bookshelf. It was the old music box. Emily had gifted it to him on his college graduation day, saying it belonged with the person who had brought it back to life. Jordan picked up the music box, carefully winding it up. As the sweet melody filled the room, he closed his eyes, transported back to that summer day when a simple act of kindness had changed the course of his life. Opening his eyes, Jordan set the music box back on the shelf and walked to his home office. Spread out on his desk were the plans for the next Fixing Futures workshop, along with applications from kids eager to participate in the program. As he sat down to review the materials, Jordan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that somewhere out there, perhaps in his old neighborhood or in another community like it, there were more kids like him, curious, talented, and just waiting for an opportunity to shine. With the melody of the music box still playing softly in the background, Jordan picked up a pen and began to work. There were futures to fix, dreams to nurture, and a cycle of kindness to continue. And Jordan was determined to do his part. One broken toy, one curious child, one life-changing opportunity at a time. As the night deepened, Jordan lost himself in his work, driven by the knowledge that every plan he made, every program he developed, had the potential to change a life, just as his life had been changed. The music box's melody faded, but the spirit it represented, of persistence, kindness, and the power of believing in others, continued to resonate, guiding Jordan's hands and heart as he worked to build a better future for the next generation. In the years that followed, the Fixing Futures program grew beyond Jordan's wildest dreams. What had started as a small initiative in his old neighborhood expanded to multiple cities, touching the lives of thousands of young people. Jordan found himself traveling frequently, speaking at schools and community centers, sharing his story and inspiring others to pursue their passions. He never tired of seeing the spark of possibility ignite in a child's eyes, knowing that he was playing a part in unlocking their potential. One particularly memorable day, Jordan found himself back at Westfield Academy, this time as a guest speaker for their annual career day. As he stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of eager young faces, he couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice carrying easily through the auditorium. 15 years ago, I sat where you're sitting now, a scholarship student from a neighborhood not too different from the ones many of you call home. I was scared, excited, and determined to make the most of the opportunity I'd been given. As Jordan shared his story, from fixing the music box to founding Fixing Futures, he could see the students leaning forward in their seats, hanging on to every word. In the front row, he spotted a familiar face, Emily, now a teacher at Westfield, beaming with pride. The lesson I want you all to take away today is this, Jordan said, nearing the end of his speech. Success isn't just about what you achieve for yourself. It's about how you use that success to lift others up. Each of you has the power to make a difference, to be the person who believes in someone else's potential. Never underestimate the impact a single act of kindness can have. As the applause died down in the Westfield Academy auditorium, Jordan stepped off the stage, his heart full of emotion. Emily was the first to reach him, enveloping him in a warm hug. "That was incredible, Jordan," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "You've come so far, and you're inspiring so many." Jordan smiled, squeezing her hand. "We've both come a long way, Em. I couldn't have done it without you and your family." As they made their way through the crowd of students eager to speak with Jordan, a young boy caught his attention. The boy was hanging back, clutching a battered notebook to his chest, his eyes wide with a mix of admiration and hesitation. Jordan approached him with a gentle smile. "Hey there, what's your name?" "Marcus," the boy replied softly. I really like your speech, Mr. Carter." Jordan knelt down to Marcus's level. "Thank you, Marcus. I'm glad it resonated with you. Is there something on your mind?" Marcus hesitated, then opened his notebook. Inside were detailed sketches of machines and gadgets, some far beyond what one would expect from a student his age. "I like inventing things," he said, his voice gaining confidence. "But some of the other kids think it's weird. They say I should focus on sports instead." Jordan's eyes lit up as he examined the sketches. "Marcus, these are incredible. When I was your age, I felt the same way. But let me tell you a secret. Being different, having a passion that others might not understand, that's what makes you special." He turned to a blank page in Marcus's notebook and quickly sketched out a simple circuit diagram. "Here's a little project for you. If you build this, it'll light up whenever someone walks into a room. Why don't you give it a try and show me how it goes at the next Fixing Futures workshop?" Marcus's face broke into a wide grin. "Really? You think I could do that?" Jordan nodded, ruffling the boy's hair. "I know you can. And Marcus, never let anyone tell you to give up on your passions. The world needs more inventors like you." As Marcus scampered off, clutching his notebook like a treasure, Emily sidled up to Jordan. She said softly, "That's exactly what my dad did for you all those years ago." Jordan nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I know, and I promise to keep paying it forward every chance I get." The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of conversations and inspirational moments. As Jordan prepared to leave Westfield, he found himself walking down the same hallway where he had once felt so out of place. Now it felt like coming home. Stepping out into the crisp autumn air, Jordan's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from the National Science Foundation, confirming that Fixing Futures had been awarded a substantial grant to expand its programs nationwide. Excitement bubbled up in Jordan's chest as he dialed Mr. Thompson's number. After all these years, Robert Thompson was still one of the first people Jordan wanted to share good news with. "Jordan, my boy." Mr. Thompson's warm voice came through the speaker. "How did the speech go?" "It went great, Mr. Thompson," Jordan replied, unable to keep the grin off his face. "But that's not why I'm calling. We got the grant." There was a moment of silence, then a whoop of joy from the other end. "That's fantastic news, Jordan. I always knew you'd do great things, but you've exceeded even my wildest expectations." As they chatted about the implications of the grant and the future of Fixing Futures, Jordan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I just want to thank you again for everything. None of this would have been possible without you and your family." "Jordan," Mr. Thompson replied softly, "you've more than repaid any debt you might have felt you owed us. The lives you're changing, the difference you're making, that's a gift beyond measure. Your grandfather would be so proud of you." After ending the call, Jordan stood for a moment, looking out over the Westfield campus. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from a curious boy tinkering in his grandfather's garage to a man on a mission to change lives. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity as Jordan worked to expand Fixing Futures. New chapters sprang up in cities across the country, each one a beacon of hope for kids who dreamed of careers in science and technology. One crisp spring morning, Jordan found himself back in his old neighborhood, preparing to break ground on the first Fixing Futures Innovation Center. The center would provide a state-of-the-art workspace for budding inventors and engineers, complete with 3D printers, robotics labs, and expert mentors. As Jordan stood at the podium, looking out over the gathered crowd, he felt a sense of coming full circle. In the front row sat his mother, her eyes shining with pride. Beside her were the Thompsons, Emily now a successful engineer in her own right. And scattered throughout the crowd were faces both familiar and new, kids from the neighborhood, local business owners, and supporters of the program. Today, Jordan began, his voice strong and clear. We're not just breaking ground on a building. We're laying the foundation for dreams. In this center, young minds will be nurtured, ideas will take flight, and the next generation of innovators will find their spark. As Jordan's speech continued, he couldn't help but think of all the twists and turns that had led to this moment. The broken music box that had started it all, the generosity of the Thompsons, the countless hours of hard work and determination. Each of us has the power to make a difference, Jordan said, nearing the end of his speech. Whether it's fixing a broken toy, offering a kind word, or providing an opportunity to someone in need, you never know how a single act of kindness might change a life or the world. As the crowd erupted in applause, Jordan picked up the ceremonial shovel. With a deep breath, he plunged it into the earth, officially breaking ground on the new center. The months that followed were a blur of activity. Jordan divided his time between overseeing the construction of the Innovation Center, expanding Fixing Futures, and continuing his own engineering work. He was determined to stay connected to the hands-on aspects of his field, believing that it kept him grounded and better able to inspire the next generation. One afternoon, as Jordan was tinkering with a new prototype in his home workshop, his phone rang. It was Emily, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Jordan, you'll never guess what happened," she exclaimed. "Remember Marcus? The boy from Westfield with the notebook full of inventions." Jordan smiled, recalling the shy boy he'd met at the career day. "Of course. How could I forget?" "Well," Emily continued, "he just won the National Young Inventors Competition, and in his acceptance speech, he credited you and Fixing Futures for giving him the confidence to pursue his dreams." A warm feeling spread through Jordan's chest. "That's incredible, Em. I'm so proud of him." "There's more," Emily said, her voice softening. "He's decided to donate his prize money to Fixing Futures. He says he wants to make sure other kids get the same chance he did." Jordan felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. This was why he did what he did, not for recognition or rewards, but for moments like this, when he could see the tangible impact of his work. As the summer turned to fall, the Fixing Futures Innovation Center neared completion. Jordan found himself spending more and more time there, eager to see his vision come to life. One evening, as the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the nearly finished building, Jordan stood in what would soon be the main workshop. He closed his eyes, imagining the space filled with curious kids, the air buzzing with ideas and invention. A soft knock on the door frame interrupted his reverie. Jordan turned to see Mr. Thompson standing there, leaning on his cane. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Mr. Thompson said with a smile. Jordan shook his head, crossing the room to greet his mentor with a warm hug. "Not at all. I'm glad you're here. What do you think?" He gestured around the space. Mr. Thompson looked around, nodding approvingly. "It's incredible, Jordan. But you know what's even more impressive?" He placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder. "The man you've become. The lives you're changing." Jordan felt a lump form in his throat. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mr. Thompson. You gave me a chance when no one else would." Mr. Thompson shook his head. "I may have opened a door, Jordan, but you're the one who walked through it. And now, you're opening doors for countless others." He paused, his eyes twinkling. "Which is why I have a proposition for you." Jordan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What kind of proposition?" "I've been thinking about my legacy," Mr. Thompson said, his voice growing serious. "And I've decided that I want to establish a foundation to support programs like Fixing Futures. I want you to run it, Jordan." Jordan's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? But Mr. Thompson, I don't know the first thing about running a foundation." Mr. Thompson chuckled. And you didn't know the first thing about running a national nonprofit when you started fixing futures. But look at what you've accomplished. He gestured around the Innovation Center. You have the vision, the passion, and the drive to make this foundation a force for good in the world. As the implications of Mr. Thompson's offer sank in, Jordan felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was an opportunity to expand his impact even further, to change even more lives. But it was also a huge responsibility. Can I think about it? Jordan asked, his mind already racing with possibilities. Mr. Thompson nodded, squeezing Jordan's shoulder. Of course. Take all the time you need. But remember, Jordan, I believe in you, just as I did all those years ago when you fixed Emily's music box. As Mr. Thompson left, Jordan remained in the workshop, his thoughts swirling. He thought about his journey, from a curious boy with a knack for fixing things to a man on the cusp of running a major philanthropic foundation. He thought about all the lives that had been touched by fixing futures, all the kids who, like Marcus, had found the confidence to pursue their dreams. And he thought about the countless more who could be helped with the resources of a foundation behind him. As the last rays of sunlight filtered through the windows, Jordan made his decision. He would accept Mr. Thompson's offer. He would take this new challenge head-on, just as he had with every other obstacle in his life. Walking out of the Innovation Center, Jordan paused to look back at the building. In just a few weeks, it would be filled with the sound of young inventors at work, their minds and hands busy creating the future. Jordan smiled, feeling a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. He might not know exactly what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would keep fixing futures, one life at a time, for as long as he was able. As he turned to leave, Jordan's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from his mother. Proud of you, baby. Your grandpa would be too. Keep changing the world one broken thing at a time. Jordan felt tears prick at his eyes as he read the message. He thought about his grandfather, about the hours they'd spent tinkering in the garage, about the lessons he'd learned that had shaped his entire life. Thanks, Mom, he texted back. I promise I will. And with that, Jordan stepped into the gathering darkness, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. He knew that as long as he kept his hands busy, his mind open, and his heart full of compassion, he could fix anything, even the broken parts of the world itself. The story of Jordan Carter, the boy who fixed a music box and ended up changing countless lives, was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning a new chapter, one filled with even greater possibilities, challenges, and opportunities to make a difference. As Jordan drove home that night, the melody of Emily's old music box played in his mind, a reminder of where he'd started and how far he'd come. But more than that, it was a promise to keep the music of hope and opportunity playing for as many people as he could reach. The future was bright, full of potential and promise. And Jordan Carter, the boy who could fix anything, was ready to face it head-on, one broken dream at a time. What would you have done if you were in Jordan's position and saw a little girl upset over her broken toy? Would you have stepped in to help? Or would you have hesitated? If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to my channel. I put a lot of time and effort into crafting these meaningful narratives, and your support truly means the world to me. Thank you for being a part of this journey.